Gohan fans, you don't want to miss out on this. To commemorate Gohan's victory over Cell Max, check out the brand new Special Beast Canon merchandise line available right now in the Geekdom 101 store in multiple sizes and colors. You don't want to wait. This one is limited edition for the most hardcore Gohan fans out there. Check it out. I'll leave a link down below so you can get your piece of history. Gohan doing the Special Beast Canon. Once again, Screen Rant is at it with more BS. So before I get into this article debunk, I want to tell you that there might be some profanity in this video. I usually save the profane stuff for the streams, but screw it. Like, we may go into it. So I got a double whammy for y'all today. There are two articles here written by Screen Rant, our dear friends at Screen Rant, who consistently for years now have screwed up and have done very little research on Dragon Ball. We've got a double feature for you guys. So first, this guy Spencer Connolly, I've seen him before. I've debunked his stuff before. He's absolutely atrocious when it comes to understanding Dragon Ball, and his knowledge on the series is surface level at best. So the first article I have here is one fallen Dragon Ball hero already proves GT is canon to Super. And then in the very next article, and by the way, that first article was written Cinco de Mayo this year, so it's not even that old. I just didn't get my hands on it till recently. And then this one was written literally 15 days later, or published 15 days later, which is, forget GT. Dragon Ball Super isn't even canon with DBZ. So many of you who follow me know that I often use the phrase, there is no canon. Now, the reason why I use that phrase is because when it comes to Dragon Ball, there are multiple canons. There's multiple continuities in the series. The original manga's events differ, although slightly in some cases and bigger in others, from the events of the Dragon Ball anime, Z anime, the movies. Then you've got Super, which has not only manga and of course the Super anime that was on the air from 2015 to 2018, but also the two movies and the previous movies too. So there's three different versions of Battle of Gods. You've got the original movie, the manga version, the anime version. So it's all, you know, subjective in a way, and I'm going to go into much more detail on this in my Canon Dragon Ball in-depth video. This is a video that I have been working on since 2017, and I've actually recorded it and dumped it multiple times because new stuff keeps coming out, and you know, I kind of want to rephrase how I say things. One version of it, I was really like, I came off really mad, which I wasn't mad, and the other one, you know, I was missing information. So it's coming down the road, but the reality is 90% of fans, 99% actually, of fans that use the word canon for Dragon Ball or have canon debates have no idea what they're talking about. I say that respectfully because this is one of those situations where a story or a piece of a story gets passed down year by year by year, and fiction becomes fact. There's never been an official Dragon Ball canon ever stated by Toriyama or Toei Animation at all. And I'm going to go deeper into that when I do my canon video. There's been some clues and other things stated, but they've never gone out and said, okay, this is canon. And because of that, you've got people saying, well, Toriyama said this, Toriyama said that, when he never said those things, and the lie spreads. Now, I want to address this article first before we get to the second one. It says, you know, like I said, one fallen Dragon Ball hero already proves GT is canon to Super. So what he's basically saying is that Dragon Ball Super, because it takes place during the 10-year skip from the Majin Buu saga to the end of Z story, which is the last 3 episodes of Dragon Ball Z and the last chapter of the Dragon Ball manga, where Goku meets Oob and then goes off the train with him. He's saying that Dragon Ball Super takes place during those 10 years, which it does, and then GT follows it. Unfortunately, that can't happen. That's literally not possible. Now, what he's talking about is the fact that King Kai, otherwise known as Kai-Osama, it says King Kai is still dead in Dragon Ball GT, so he can't come back in Super. So, Stephen Connolly really sucks at this, bro. But So in this article, what he's saying is when the North Kai, this guy, when he died in the Cell Saga, which he did die, he was never brought back to life. Now, they have discussed bringing him back here and there, but as far as we know, he still has the halo, even going into GT. The problem with people saying that GT can still happen after Super is that it literally makes no sense and is literally impossible. And I'm going to tell you why. Because Beerus and Whis are nowhere to be found or even mentioned in Dragon Ball Super. There's no mention of any of the events that have gone on in Super and GT whatsoever. And the biggest one is the fact that the Supreme Kai and Kibito fused in Dragon Ball Z, and they're still fused in GT. They're still fused in GT, but in Super, they're defused. Remember, in the Universe 6, Universe 7 tournament, they're defused. That's another reason. Frieza, as of right now, is still alive. Now, we don't know if he's going to stay alive beyond the end of Z. We don't know what the fate is of Black Frieza as of this video recording, which I'm doing on August 28th, 2023. So remember that when you comment. But there's been so many things that have happened in Super. Gohan Beast, Orange Piccolo. There have been so many new things that Super has introduced into the Dragon Ball timeline that there is no way that GT, none of this stuff is in GT. So either they're going to do some time travel shenanigans to erase all of Super, which was a theory that I made a joke video about years ago with Real to Real, or it's a different timeline, a different continuity, and that's what it is. Dragon Ball Super's branching canon is separate from GT. Everyone knows this. Well, not everyone, but I'm sure most of you know this. GT was created as an anime-only sequel to Dragon Ball Z. That was stated by Toriyama, Kozo Morishita, and other producers. It was an anime-only continuation of the Dragon Ball Z anime. It was not a continuation of the Dragon Ball manga. Now, a lot of fans have mistakenly said that, well, then maybe Super is canon to Kai. That's also wrong. That's a huge misconception. Dragon Ball Kai is just a recut version of Dragon Ball Z with less filler. But it still has filler, including Hell, the Dragon Ball Z version of Hell, which contradicts Toriyama's version of Hell. So that's nonsense. I get why people say that. They say it because because Dragon Ball Kai in 2015, the Buu saga ended and then Super started. So people thought they were connecting the two, but no, I assure you that's not the case at all. Kai is its own thing. It's just a recut version of Dragon Ball Z. That's all it is. There's nothing more to it than that. It's a recut, redubbed with new music version of Z in cropped 16:9. That's it. Well, depending on what version you watch, it depends. But that's all it is. It's nothing more. There's no separate canon. Now, second article. This is what I'm going to get to here. Forget GT. Dragon Ball Super isn't even canon with DBZ. So obviously, because Stephen Connolly got this wrong and has gotten so many other things wrong in the articles he's written, his garbage articles. No offense, Stephen Connolly. I'm sure you're a nice guy, but you fucking suck at this. You fucking suck, dude. And I understand that people make these articles to get paid. I get it. But it wouldn't hurt to maybe do a little bit more research instead of putting out your bullshit. So with this second article here, if I already know this guy doesn't know what he's talking about here, I'm going to already assume that this is garbage too. And it is. Forget GT. Dragon Ball Super isn't even canon with DBZ. Now, this is a bit more controversial because people in the fandom have said that Dragon Ball Super is not canon. Now, that is a very provocative thing to say, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if you say Dragon Ball Super is not canon with Dragon Ball or Z, are you talking about the Dragon Ball Super manga? Are you talking about the movies, the anime? That's where things become more nuanced. That's why I say there is no canon, because there isn't. The safest thing when it comes to canon is the original 42 volumes of the manga. That's it. Everything else is like DLC. You understand what I'm saying? Including Super. Toriyama's involved with Super, but he's not even putting together all the ideas himself. It's multiple people. Akio Iyoku, what's his name? Toyotaro, even Victor Uchida. It's a group effort. But Toriyama's more involved in Super than he is in GT, and he does write the movies, but even he does not conceptualize them. So let's discuss what he says in this article. So he says Goku and Vegeta's relationship in Super contradicts Dragon Ball Z. He's talking about the end of Z and how, you know, they haven't seen, Goku hasn't seen Bulma in like 5 years or 4 years. And that is a contradiction. He's not wrong about that. That's one of the biggest plot holes in the series. At the end of the Dragon Ball manga, Goku tells Bulma, I haven't seen you in 4 or 5 years, depending on what translation you have. But because of the Dragon Ball Super timeline of events, we know that Goku's seen Bulma because Broly takes place within those 5 years. And they hung out in that movie. So maybe Goku was over-exaggerating. That's headcanon. It is a plot hole. Now, moving on. The thing about this article is, okay, this guy sucks. Okay, let me explain here though. In Dragon Ball Z's End of Z epilogue by Akira Toriyama, fans have taken 10 years into the future after Goku beat Kid Buu with the Spirit Bomb, and every single Z fighter has gathered at this year's World Martial Arts Tournament, which is the perfect ending for the series finale, given that tournament is one of the most significant mainstays of Dragon Ball. I agree with that. Right before the tournament, when all of the Z fighters are meeting up again after being separated for some time, Goku makes a comment to Bulma and Vegeta about he hasn't seen them in 4 years. Well, it was mostly Bulma. Now, he's right about this. He's not wrong, but he's saying that Super's not canon to Dragon Ball Z, not the Dragon Ball manga. And like I said earlier, Dragon Ball Z, the anime, and Dragon Ball, the manga, which includes the Z portion, those are two separate versions of the same, of not the same, but a very similar story. The manga is the main manuscript Toriyama wrote. The anime adds to it. It's an adaptation. It's no different than saying that if you read the first 50 issues of Amazing Spider-Man by Stan Lee, it's a separate canon than the Spider-Man movies by Sam Raimi. You understand what I'm saying? That those are two separate continuities. Obviously, one takes ideas from the Stan Lee stuff. Obviously, it's based on it, but it's not the same story. This is not that difficult to figure out, but yet Dragon Ball and anime fans make it seem like we're doing fucking advanced calculus here when it's not that difficult of a concept. It's a simple fucking concept. You understand? To quote Quaman many years ago. So he goes on to say, while the existence of Dragon Ball Super was initially fine in terms of fitting into the wider Dragon Ball canon, every movie, episode, and chapter that continues Super storyline makes what Goku said to Vegeta increasingly impossible. He's not wrong on that, but here he goes. In fact, the final nail in this proverbial coffin was Pan herself. In End of Z, Pan is fighting in the World Martial Arts Tournament as a 4-year-old, which means according to Goku, the last time he saw Vegeta was when Pan was born. Well, in Dragon Ball Super Superhero, Pan is 3 years old, and that movie shows Goku and Vegeta training on Beerus' world with Whis and Broly. This alone proves that Dragon Ball Super can't take place. So he's using that one line to justify that it can't take place, and while I do agree that that one line is a major problem, plus the fact that at the end of Z, there's no reference at all to what happened in Super. That's not necessarily a plot hole, because maybe they're just past it. And maybe by then, the big theory is that Goku, by then, has already fully mastered the true Ultra Instinct where he has it in base. And that makes sense. That part makes logical sense. That one line does trip things up. But the whole thing he's talking about is basically saying that it's more consistent with the original DBZ and GT. And that's true. And that's because GT was a sequel to Dragon Ball Z. Understand? Dragon Ball Super is an interquel during the events of the Dragon Ball manga and anime, including Z. However, there are still contradictions because of anime-only filler and the fact that Dragon Ball Super has 3 different canons. So the moral of the story, folks, is don't read these articles, because even though Spencer Connolly does get some things right, I'm not going to sit here and say he's 100% wrong, because that would be me lying. This line is a major issue with the continuity. They haven't completely made it to where it's totally out of the question. Now, many have theorized, well, are they going to rewrite the end of Z and add more context to it, or erase that line? That's a possibility, but then again, you're going to have fans who are going to say, well, what about the fact that at the end of Z in the manga, he still says it, right? You can't just go back in time in the real world and erase what Toriyama wrote. It's impossible. So they might have to figure something out, but it's not that big of a deal to me that he said 4 or 5 years. That's never been a huge deal to me. At first, maybe it was a few years ago, but once we got to the Broly section of the story and Jiren and all that, it just became something that is not that big of a deal. Ultimately, like I said a million times, there is no straightforward canon outside of the original 42 volumes of the manga. There's different canons, different versions of stories, like with Dragon Ball Superhero, for instance, which is right now we got the manga going on, the movie came out last year. 2 different versions of the same story. So the best thing to do, instead of getting into canon arguments, is just to understand that, and then you won't get tripped up. But hey, I'm only one man. People are still gonna have these fucking arguments. They don't want to listen. I can't hammer the truth in your head if you don't want to listen. But most of you who listen to the video and watch the video understand that this is how it is. This is literally how it is. Japan does not give a shit about canon, dude, when it comes to Dragon Ball. They don't care. They do not care. That's not their main priority. Their main priority is to make money and to produce like fun moments, which is why like plot holes aren't really that big of a deal to them. It can bother us, but to them, it's never been that big of a deal. Granted, I do wish Dragon Ball was more consistent as a fan. I do wish there was one canon, but once you accept the fact that there's not, it's no different than, like I mentioned earlier, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man versus the Amazing Spider-Man movies versus Tom Holland. It's just different adaptations of the same characters. I hope this makes sense to you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.